All right, hello. Good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good evening, depends on the time that you're watching this. This is now a pre-recorded video of the lesson number 5. I apologize na una yung lesson 6, ano. But to my students who are tuning in. We'll now have the lecture on the virtue ethical doctrines of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So this is also a good way for you to, since we have no classes pa rin, no? You watch it on your own time, grab some snacks if you want. And yeah, let's discuss lesson 5 as we understand deeper how ethics has come about because of these people. Now, before we start, no, to understand ethics, we have to return to our roots, diba? The very root of philosophy actually is starting or stemming out from, well, the contributions of Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. Socrates was the game changer in philosophy, as they say, because when he came into the scene, no, the pre-Socratics or yung mga people, not before Socrates actually, although pre-Socratics ang tawag sa kanila, it doesn't necessarily mean na before Socrates. Yung ideologies lang nila is different. So the pre-Socratics talked about the arche, right? So arche means the origin or the starting point of everything. Most philosophers during the day were only trying to figure out where did we come from or what was the arche all about. But in essence, though, when Socrates came into the scene, wala siyang pakialam na, no? Dun sa, wala siyang pakialam, etc. Dun sa mga origin of the universe, where did we come from, etc. So he was actually the game changer in philosophy. And he focused on the human mind. And according to him, there's nothing that the human mind can be satisfied by nothing less than the unchanging objective truth. And he held, no, that if you cannot make general statements that were really founded on the facts of reality, you cannot really reason at all. The way Socrates introduced philosophy to us is by engaging into conversations. In fact, he might be even called the original yapper in his time. No? Siya yung pinakauna nag-yap talaga in his time. Born in Athens, Greece around 469 BC and died in 399 BC, Socrates focused or placed emphasis on the human experience, while the pre-Socratic philosophers examined the natural world, where did we come from, what's the origin of the universe, what is the structure of the cosmos, etc., etc. Socrates focused more on individual morality, question what made a good life, and discuss social and political questions. Actually, his work on and his ideas became the foundation of Western philosophy, making him the father of Western philosophy. But there's something interesting about the life of Socrates. We have the Socratic problem, which presupposes that we were not sure of his existence, which is kind of weird because, well, parang, ba't na siya pinag-usapan kung hindi tayo sure sa existence niya? Yun lang yung tinatawag nating Socratic problem. Because everything that we know about Socrates is based on the accounts of others, which were often still fictionalized or sensationalized by his, contemporaries, especially his students like Plato, Xenophon, Aristophanes, and all of these people. So that's what we call the Socratic problem. But from the text of others, we are able to gather that he was the son of a stonemason and a midwife, and he himself was a stonemason. And then before he became a philosopher, he was a soldier, no? And according to the accounts of many, he was not that aesthetically good looking during a time where external beauty was very important for Greeks, no? He served in the military as a soldier for the Peloponnesian War. That's the battle between Greece and Sparta. And he had 3 sons. He had a much younger wife, kind of like super young, to be honest. So may pagka ano si Socrates, no? But he lived in poverty, and he might have worked as a stonemason even before turning into philosophy. Now, what's interesting about Socrates is that if his life was not that, parang hindi tayo sure sa life niya, yung death niya naman, yung pinaka, well documented. In fact, when Socrates was, I have a book here, the dialogues of Plato. So, itong dialogues of Plato, nasulat lahat dito ni Socrates, ni Plato, I should say, yung even the death no, of Socrates. So, Plato was the one who also gave us this understanding of how he was treated. Why did he die? He did not die of natural causes. He was actually he died actually, I should say, because of a crime, and he was accused of what? He was accused of being unreligious and corrupting the minds of the youth. Can you imagine, no? Nagyayap-yap ka lang dyan sa city-state ng Greece, and then biglang sinabihan ka na unreligious ka and you are corrupting the minds of the city's youth. So, but actually he was found guilty and was sentenced to death by drinking the poisonous drink. Tawag dun ay hemlock. Diba? Hemlock. And he drank the poison without hesitation. He had the chance to flee, take note. He had the chance to be exiled. He had the chance to escape his death, but he did not. As a form of parang final lesson to his followers. This is a painting, a physical parang representation or parang symbolic painting entitled The Death of Socrates by Jacques-Louis David, if I'm not mistaken. And you notice here that in the aspect of the painting, if you notice, no, um, where's the pointer? You notice the Socrates, di ba medyo may abs pala si Socrates? What? Anyway, and this was supposed to be Plato right here. This person right here was supposed to be Plato, no? And you notice it resembles some sort of parang yung death of Jesus did. While Socrates is looking this way, all of his followers were kind of looking at that way, na symbolizing some sort of parang and you notice that 12 din yung mga tao sa paligid niya, parang 12 disciples of Jesus. But yeah, anyway, this is if you notice that the man here in the left side was mourning, parang weeping siya nung nakababa lang siya. That was Plato. A kind of like a representation of how sad Plato was when his master and his friend and of course ultimate teacher died. What did Socrates try to tell us? To quote him, sabi niya, no, you're mistaken, my friend, if you think that a man who is worth anything ought to spend his time weighing up the prospects of life and death. There's something in between that, right? And he has only one thing to consider in performing any action, that is whether he is acting right or wrongly, like a good man or a bad one. So to manifest some sort of understanding on what Socrates was trying to tell us, Socrates believed that in order for a person to be wise, that individual must be able to understand himself first. You know what happened kasi nung panahon nung after the Peloponnesian War, they embarrassingly lost no sa Greece sa Sparta I should say. The Greeks lost. Dami-dami nilang men, dami nilang kawal, but they lost against the Spartans. Ikaw konti lang yung Spartans, di ba? Mga 300 lang sila, di ba? May movie pa nga yun. So Socrates was trying to understand people because ang dami daw taong na-fixate masyado ano sa material objects, and he sought to understand the difference between acting good and being good. And it was the new and unique way that approached knowledge, consciousness, and morality that he would forever change philosophy, because he tried to take a look at the deeper core level of human beings. And dito rin papasok kung bakit tayo ethical selves. What makes us ethical? Yun yung kanyang pinupintuyan din, Socrates. Now, there are three things that he wants to make us remember. First and foremost, self-knowledge is a sufficient condition to the good life. And he identifies knowledge with virtue. And if knowledge can be learned, so can virtue. Kaya ang pinakaunang virtue ethical doctrine ay nanggaling actually kay Socrates. And he states that virtue can be taught and actually should be taught. Second, he believes that the unexamined life is not worth living. Yun yung kanyang perfect quote, di ba? The unexamined life is not worth living. One must seek knowledge and wisdom before private interests. And in this manner, knowledge is sought as a means to ethical action. Now, if I ask you, right, if I survey lang, like, why do you still do good things? Because you are knowledgeable enough that doing bad things resorts to bad consequences. And napakasimple nun, right? You do something good, you know that the consequences will be good. You know, you do something bad, then of course there are bad consequences. And take note, what one truly knows is the dictates of one's conscience or its soul. Now, this leads us now to what he calls the Socratic paradox. Before we try to understand what the Socratic paradox is, let's try to experiment first, no? If I don't know, you were tasked, no, to buy a newspaper. Pumunta ka na dun sa newsstand, nakita mo na yung nagbebenta ng newspaper, and sabi niya, magkano po ito? 50 pesos lang, sir, no? But you only have 20 pesos in your wallet, and you notice that the vendor is blind. And you will never know the difference. He will never know the difference, right? If you pay 20 or 50. No. The experiment goes, would you shortchange a blind news vendor by telling him that he was paid with 50 pesos rather than 20 pesos? Of course, your initial answer would be, no, of course not. Diba? I hope you're not one of my students who said na parang, hingi pa po ako ng sukli, sir, sabi, no? Sana hindi ganun, no? Sana hindi kayo hingi pa ng sukli, no? Why? Why is it that our conscience dictates us to do the right thing? We know that morality pays, right? And we should not act from self-interest. This answer presupposes that it's the nature of the world that cheaters get caught and good people are always rewarded. And right action is always to your advantage. Hence, happiness has to do with the inner state of your soul, not what other people think or do. But the Socratic paradox parang gives us this understanding that, bakit kaya hindi pa rin natin maintindihan masyado ang mundo, or let's say, even if we know that something is bad, we still continue to do it. Di ba? So, there is in ethics, this idea holds significant implications. Why? Because the Socratic paradox emphasizes humility and intellectual openness, suggesting that moral understanding requires acknowledging the limits of our knowledge. Now, there is a quote by Socrates that he says, "Wisest is he who knows that he does not know." Di ba? Ang ganda ng quote na yun. O kaya yun, no? Ang daming naiyak ni Socrates. So, ang pinaka-wise daw na tao ay alam niya na hindi niya alam. Kaya nga paradoxical, right? You know what a paradox is, right? Paradox is contradicting. They cannot exist both at the same time, ironic, etc., etc. You know, Socrates believed that people do wrong not out of the desire to do harm, but because they misunderstood what is genuinely good. Right? Like this. Thus, he argued that virtue or having some sort of ethical behavior is inherently tied to knowledge. Therefore, people who are ignorant are doomed to do evil things. And when we truly know what is right, we are more likely to do it. Like this, diba? Like this example right here. But the problem is that the worst type of people, according to Socrates, are those people na alam na nga po nilang mali, pero ginagawa pa rin nila. Hence, ignorance is evil. The root of all ignorance is evil. So given their whole attention to this question, is what I say or do just, or is it not? Now, the factors that lead to the Socratic ethical paradox is first and foremost, you should only do what is right, irrespective of matters of life or death, right? And your life should be spent on the improvement of your soul, because an unexamined life is not worth living, right? So the paradox challenges people to constantly question and reevaluate their ethical beliefs rather than accepting moral norms that are fixed. You know, Socrates encourages us that there needs to be an ongoing inquiry, no, an ongoing self-reflection and an open dialogue as a way to pursue a good life. Now, the Socratic paradox would say people act immorally but they do not do so deliberately. Sana nagigets yun na, no, kung saan tayo nanggagaling. So, in this sense, the Socratic paradox is a call, no, to it ethical self-awareness. If I ask you once again, why do you want to not shortchange this vendor? Alam mo nang madaya yun, di ba? Alam mo nang madaya, nadayain pa ang isang bulag na nga siya, tadayain mo pa. Lugi na nga siya, mas ilulugi mo pa siya. So, Socrates wants us to foster some sort of moral framework based on growth and, of course, personal and collective growth, right? So, um, it therefore, you know, this is the other the paradox right here, right? Everyone seeks what is most serviceable to himself, sorry. Because yeah, we are egoistic, right? If you know what is good, you will always act in a way to achieve it. Therefore, knowledge is actually a virtue, good, arete, which means excellent, no? Yun yung philosophy mamaya ni Aristotle. And ignorance is definitely bad or evil or not useful at all. And take note, since no one knowingly harms himself, if harm comes to you, then we assume that you acted in ignorance. For example, hindi ko alam na mali pala yun. Hindi ko alam na na unethical pala yun. Okay lang yun in the first place. You do not really intentionally harm yourself. But according to Socrates, if you intentionally do that, then you are really unethical. If you continue to be oblivious to the facts, for example, alangan naman pumunta ka sa judge at sabihin, sorry po, hindi ko alam bawal mang-rape. You can't do that, right? Sorry po, kamay ko lang. You cannot do that, right? Ignorance of the law excuses no one, like they say. So we are responsible for what we know or for that matter that we don't know, right? Therefore, the only good is knowledge, and the only evil is ignorance. Take note, when we truly know what is right, we are more likely to do it. Take note, ha? When we truly know what is right, we are more likely to do it. Ewan ko na lang sa atin, kapag alam na nga nating tama, hindi naman natin ginagawa. And worse, alam na nga nating mali, ginagawa pa rin natin. Sabi ni Sir Walter Scott, oh, what a wicked web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Ayon na ayon natin sa mga taong takot-takot sa sarili nilang multo, right? People who do things or people who hate um, things that they do themselves, di ba? Gusto nila, ayaw nilang gawin sa kanila pero ginagawa nila in the first place. Why is it that we weave deception, or when we deceive people, we tend to find joy in it, di ba? Parang natutuwa tayo. Sabi sa German, Schadenfreude, di ba? You find happiness in the miseries of others. But there is some sort of, a truth into it. Because, well, we are just but humans after all. But, sabi nga ni Socrates na I know that I know nothing, or wisest is he who knows that he does not know. We can actually recognize our ignorance. That is the good thing. But if we already acknowledge our ignorance and we don't do anything about it, that is where it gets bad. So once true happiness is promoted by doing what is right, when true utility is served by tending to your soul, you are achieving happiness, and happiness is evident only in terms of a long-term effect on the soul, which leads us mamaya sa cardinal virtues ni Plato. So teleological yung ethics, therefore, o virtue ethics ni Socrates. Telos, which means, a function or purpose. There is a duty or moral obligation from what is good or desirable as an end to be achieved. And this is also known as the consequentialist ethics. Nakadepende sa consequences ng action mo yung mga, attributes ng iyong pagiging ethical. That is the point of Socrates. Well, all of you are not philosophy majors naman. So I'm not going to really fully, I'm not going to, sobrang i-discuss itong mga ito. Kasi nga, well, like I said, no, you are not philosophy majors. But, the Socratic ethics is trying to tell us that if evil were done deliberately or voluntarily, then evil would be an involuntary act, and consequently, no one properly be held responsible for evil that is done. Since on this view of Socrates, the good is that which furthers a person's real interest, it will follow then that if the good is known, people will seek it, right? But many times people do not. Ulitin ko ulit yung sinasabi ko kanina. When we truly know what is right, we are likely to do it. But why is it that hindi? Yun na nga yung Socratic paradox. Alam mo na nga po na pangit nang i-shortchange yung newspaper vendor, no, na bulag, tapos parang gadayain mo pa siya. Di ba? Parang anong klaseng tao ka naman? Sobrang unethical mo naman, di ba? If moral laws were objective and independent of feelings, and if knowledge were to be identified with virtue, which is what is being ethical, then it would seem to follow that moral problems are always capable of rational resolutions, but often they are not because of our ignorance. That's interesting, diba? Yan. So, ayaw natin sa mga ignorante. Right? Ayaw natin sa mga ignorante. So, in conclusion, Socrates states that no one chooses evil. No one chooses to act in ignorance. We seek the good, but we fail to achieve it by ignorance or the lack of knowledge as to how to obtain what is good. And to make it worse, he believes that no one would, not to make it worse, to elaborate it, he believes that no one would intentionally harm themselves. When harm comes to us, although we thought that we are seeking the good is not obtained in such a case since we lack knowledge as to how best to achieve the good. That is what moral catastrophes are all about. Diba sabi ni Immanuel Kant dun sa lesson 6 natin. So if it's the first time you're watching this, panoorin mo yung lesson 6. If you have already watched lesson 6, it's an ode to this. Diba? Pero take note, yung paradox is a challenge, diba, to constantly re-evaluate ourselves. Actually, Aristotle criticized Socrates for this. Sabi niya, no, some people can intentionally harm themselves, sabi ni Aristotle. O, di ba? Parang challenge si Socrates. Pero an individual might know what is best and yet still fail to act rightly. That's why nagkaroon siya ng theory niya ng kanyang golden mean. And mamaya pag-usapan natin yun. So that is what Socrates was trying to tell us. And then came this guy, Plato. Right here. Great Dialogues of Plato. Yan o, si Plato. Share ko lang, pangalan din niya na aso. Anyway, Plato was the student, the greatest parang student of of Socrates. Some people would even say that they are more than friends. Pero platonic lang sila. Doon nga nanggaling yung term, no, na platonic, di ba? So who the hell was Plato, right? Plato was supposed to be a politician. Actually, Plato was supposed to be, he was a member of the aristocrats, di ba? That's a Greek aristocracy siya. Originally drawn towards the path of politics, but he became a philosopher because of the Peloponnesian War. And then when his teacher, master, was executed, he tried to turn his life around and venture into philosophy. After Socrates, he studied under the care of Pythagoras in Sicily and founded the Academy, a school where like-minded individuals taught and discussed philosophy, mathematics, and all of these things, and of course, law and madami pa, no? And he wrote the Republic, which is the parang ultimate book of Plato, um, talking about the entire city-state of Greek, plus the stories of Socrates, paradoxes, allegories, etc., etc. In fact, manipis lang to, pero manipis for me, pero ang hirap pa rin basahin, no, ni Plato. Now, Plato's dialogues, mostly written in his The Republic, dealt with many variety of subjects tulad ng art, theater, ethics, immortality, the mind, metaphysics, law, etc. And he wanted the readers to have some sort of ability to form their own opinions and subjects and not to be told how to think. He wanted them to think independently. Now, ano naman contribution ni Plato sa ethics? Virtue ethics din yung basis ng kanyang ethics. What do we mean by this? It's actually, again, towards the eudaimonia. Parang yung sinasabi ni Aristotle. Now, to fully understand what Plato is trying to tell us, pwede nating tignan nung sinulat in the Republic, actually pati yung The Apology to Socrates, no? Sinulat niya yun nung namatay na, no, si Socrates. Um, let's try to understand this ongoing question that will justice prevail if no one sees you? Astig to. This is now the allegory of the Ring of Gyges. This is one of the best stories that I can, I acknowledge and I love reading on justice and anonymity and being invisible, diba? So what is the story about? If you don't know it, so Plato was trying to, give this story about Gyges. According to tradition, Gyges was a shepherd to the king of Lydia. And there was a great storm, and then there was an earthquake, and then the earthquake made an opening in the earth. And then may nakita siya sa loob no na wooden horse. And inside the wooden horse was a body, and inside the body was appearing to be a ring. Kinuha niya yung ring na yun, di ba? And then he went back up, no? Pumasok siya sa sa nahating lupa, tapos pumasok siya ulit. Now, he realized, no, that when he ang tawag dito, when he puts on the ring, he becomes invisible for some reasons. Bigla siya naging invisible, di ba? Parang, di ba, parang si Gollum lang or si Frodo or si Bilbo sa Lord of the Rings. In fact, I think J.R.R. Tolkien parang was basing this din, no, sa allegory of Ring of Giants. Anyway, so the shepherds met together according to custom that they have to report monthly about the flocks to the king. And to their assembly, he came having the ring on his finger. And as he was sitting among the chants to turn the collet of the ring inside his hand, he instantly became invisible to the rest of the company. And for some reasons, they didn't see him, they didn't even hear him, etc. So nagkaroon ngayon ng parang power si Gyges, no? He was astonished at this. And again, touching the ring, he turned the collet outwards and then he reappeared again. Diba? So he made several trials of the ring and always with the same result. When he turned the collet inwards, he became invisible. When outwards, he reappeared. So whereupon he contrived to be chosen one of the messengers who were sent to the court, where as soon as he arrived, he seduced the queen and he helped to conspire killing the king. And later on, he took all over the kingdom of Lydia. So, yun yung story ng Ring of Gyges, di ba? Because of his power of invisibility, he was a just person. He was a peasant. He was a shepherd. He was corrupted by that power of the ring. Now, ang tinatanong sa atin ni Plato, suppose that there were two such magic rings, and the just put one of them and the unjust the other. So parang experiment. Okay, let's put you here. You are a just person. Let's put you here. You are an unjust person. Will the just person kaya be inevitably become unjust? Now, no man can be imagined to be such of an iron nature that he would stand fast in justice, right? And no man would keep his hands off what was not on his own when he could safely take what he liked out of the market or go into house and lie with any one of his pleasure or kill or release from prison from he would and in all respects to be like God among men. Yun naman yung point ni Plato. But the challenge here is that if a man could act free of being caught by any crime, would he inevitably become corrupt? Yun yung kanyang tinatanong. And an underlying more question is that, is the only basis for morality the fear of getting caught or shame? Ah, ganda nun, no? Ganda nun. I mean, most of us here would try to say, di ba, na parang, tinatry ko laging i-ask to sa mga students ko as a sort of experiment, as a sort of recitation na, what is the first thing that you would do if you were invisible? Siyempre, mahiya sila. Sabi nila, hindi sir, gagawin pa rin ng mabuti. Imposible, hindi mo to try gumawa ng something bad. I mean, alam ko ikaw yan. But you know what I mean, right? Even I would be, tempted to do something bad because there, first and foremost, there will be no consequences. No one will catch you. No one will even God himself nakapikit. O, di ba? Saan ka pa? Yun yung mga sinasabi nila, di ba? But this is the challenge now what Plato is. Plato argues that the ring of Gyges, and invisibility and also anonymity, is the only barrier between being just and being unjust. And he argues that we would all be unjust if we had a cloak of anonymity. And injustice, therefore, is far more profitable. And we are only just because it is necessary, because someone sees us. But Plato is trying to teach us integrity. Have you ever heard of that word? Integrity. Diba? Ang sinasabi ni Plato sa atin is that the true just person is the person who does something good even if no one sees him. Or especially if no one sees him. O, di ba? Yun ang taong may integridad. Di ba? Politicians nowadays do not have integrity because, well, they are corrupt, they do graft. The moment that they can, do something corruptible, they would do it. Not all, pero you know what I'm talking about. Or let's say people who are prone to cheating, people who are prone to parang doing bad things are so convinced that their power is unlimited. Their power of anonymity. Hindi sila mahuhuli. Don't worry, hindi ka mahuhuli dito. Sige na, gawin na natin, hindi tayo mahuhuli dito. There seems to be some sort of great power to that. But just like what Uncle Ben is trying to tell us, right? Uncle Ben of Spider-Man, of Peter Parker, he says, with great power comes great responsibility. And there is a big responsibility if you hold power such as anonymity and invisibility. Gyges became confident in his actions because of the ring, and then he acted violently on the power gained from the ring. So Plato argues that deep inside, we are innately like Gyges. We are role-abiding citizens because it is only necessary if we live in the society. But if we are cloaked with some sort of invisibility, then we crave the desire to do evil. That is really, really bad. Now, how is anonymity used, no, to promote injustice? Some people are so aware that they can scam other people because they have a mask, di ba? Hindi sila matitrace back eh. Di ba? Kaya nga po ang anonymity ay parang talagang parang evil talaga siya eh. Di ba? Yung mga scam text, di ba? Scam text, no? And sino usually ang nabibiktima, yung mga matatanda, di ba? Yung mga vulnerable sa hindi alam ng technology. In fact, even hacking, no? Cyber security, cyber threats, no? Doxing, yeah, no? Cyber stalking, tracking usernames, going through government records, phishing scams, tracking IP address, reverse phone lookup, packet sniffing, data broker sites, etc., etc. Now, why are people so confident doing this? Well, because no one can see them. No one can see them. Eh. Bank robbers even would wear on masks, ski masks, and whatever, no, just to parang para ma-hide yung kanilang identity. In the dating world, no, di ba? Catfishing, poser, yeah, no, nagbibigay ng nagbabago ng anyo, nagiging anonymous, di ba? Now, Maria Lutgarda Glorioso, he's a she's a writer, no? Ito yung ano no, The Power of Our Voices, Lessons from Plato and the Ring of Gyges. Ito yung paper niya. Sabi niya, no, our individual decisions cannot represent entire populations as whole. Tama naman yun. And we need to look at each other as people, not as anonymous figures or people with labels attached to stigmas. You are someone beyond your online persona, and for that reason, you cannot outlaw anonymity because it is merely a blanket solution to a deeper and more complex issue. Why is it that we are so engaging when it comes to keyboard warriors, for example? Kasi takot sila eh. I mean, sorry, hindi sila takot, right? Especially no elections, right? Nag-aaway-away tayo because we are cloaked by this social media anonymity, 'di ba? But um Glorioso is trying to tell us that we are beyond that. We are beyond our person. We are beyond our online persona. Because when we look at person, just like what Immanuel Kant will tell us, diba, sa lesson 6, they are not mere means for us to, to be manipulated, to be objectified, etc., etc. Worse is that may mga tao nag-objectify ng people online. For example, a girl or a woman posts a picture, hindi naman seemingly good picture, hindi naman siya talaga, alam mo yun, parang it's not even provocative to say the least. Pero ginagawang provocative. Tapos sasabihin ng mga tao na parang, oh, she's asking for it. She's posting that. Ni-objectify na natin siya. And malakas yung loob natin. Kasi we use dump accounts. Di ba? We use online persona, profile picture natin walang kinalaman sa sarili natin. So something like that, no? So, yun na, no? It's a blanket solution to a deeper and more complex issue. You are beyond your person. You are beyond your online persona. You cannot dictate others just because you are anonymous. And that is where it gets worse if we tolerate that kind of behavior. Diba? So for example, you have a friend who is like, sige, keyboard warrior siya, or let's say, I don't want this anymore. I need to create a dump account. Siraan natin siya, parinig tayo sa Facebook, hindi naman tayo magiging ano kasi hindi tayo makikilala. Same is true with Gyges. Di ba? Gyges had used the power of invisibility, anonymity, to lure the queen, di ba? To seduce the queen, to kill the king, and to rule over the kingdom, etc., etc. So what this is trying to tell us, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, our virtuous self needs to be checked. Kaya nga mo meron tayong tinatawag na cardinal virtues ni Plato. Now, last time, we talked about the soul. Di ba? Tatlo yung parte ng soul. We have reason, spirit, and appetites. Meron pa pala siyang magiging may makukuha ka pa pala doon sa three parts of the soul. And according to Plato, that's wisdom, courage, temperance, or doing things in moderation, and justice. There is a diagram right here, ladies and gentlemen. And what do you notice? So, lapit natin yan onti. Sorry. Nalaman natin sa lesson 3 natin, at lesson 2, I should say, that Plato suggested that the human soul, di ba, has three parts. And the three parts is reason, spirit, and appetites. Now, what do you notice? The human soul is a component of these three things. And you notice here, if you have some sort of reason, you acquire wisdom. Oh, di ba? Galing. Now, if your reason is in harmony with your spirit, then you acquire courage. If your spirit is in harmony with your appetite, then you have temperance. Marunong kang magtimpi. Kasi hindi over-excess ang iyong appetite and yung spirit mo ay well-versed, no? Hindi ka super spirited, hindi ka too emotional, etc., etc. Take note, if your reason is in harmony with your spirit, spirit is in harmony with your appetite, these are components of your soul. Now, these are kinds. Kaya nga siya kind, di ba? Kind. Makukuha ka sub-kinds after this. And a person, therefore, who is wise enough, courageous enough, and does things in moderation or is temperate will eventually become just. Ayan. Justice ay nagiging subkind. And what do you notice? The soul is actually a characterization of the cardinal virtue itself. Therefore, justice implies that superior character intelligence, while injustice means deficiency in both respects. So the point here that Plato is trying to suggest to us is that a just man is wiser because he acknowledges the principle of limits. Take note of this, ladies and gentlemen. Now, di ba sabi natin, kapag tayo ay reasonable, pero hindi naman spirited, at OA naman yung appetite natin, wala din kwenta yon. Di ba? Yes, you are the most reasonable person, pero hindi ka maawain. hindi mo makontrol yung appetite mo, wala ka rin courage and hindi ka rin marunong magtimpi. Di ba? Most people who do unethical things are people who lose the harmony of their spirit and these cardinal virtues. Hence, according to Plato, unlimited desire and claims would lead to conflict. This is actually a paper by D.R. Bandari of JNV University, a Plato's concept of justice, di ba? According to him, there is always some specific virtue in everything which enables it to work very well. And if it is deprived of that virtue, it works badly. Sa madaling salita, pag hindi gumagana itong soul mo, hindi mo rin makukuha ang hustisya, which is the cardinal virtue. Diba? The soul has a specific function to perform. When it performs its specific function, it has a specific excellence or virtue, and if it is deprived of that particular virtue, then it cannot possibly do its work well. So, in harmony dapat lahat yan. Hence, justice is not just a mere strength, but a harmonious strength of all of these things. Take note, justice is not the rights of the stronger, but the effective harmony of the whole. Plato is trying to tell us, therefore, ladies and gentlemen, that even if, for example, even if you are well spirited enough and you have appetite, if you have no reason, then you will not acquire wisdom. Ano ka? Close-minded ka. Sige, may reason ka naman, open-minded. Sige, may spirit ka, pero wala kang appetite. Di ba? I mean, yung appetite mo is off the roof, di ba? Hindi pa rin in harmony with your soul. Wala din. Di ba? Hindi ka marunong magtimpi. Pag galit, galit ka agad. In fact, most of the majority, or no, not majority, all of the capital sins, di ba? You have greed, anger, lust, pride, sloth, envy. These stem out from you not having temperance because you have over excess appetite. Diba? Let's say, most sexual addict are resorting to rape, etc., etc. Because di ka sila marunong magtimpi, di ba? Ngayon, ang sinasabi therefore ni Plato sa atin is that we need to be wise enough, courageous enough, and do things in moderation in order for us to be just. Ladies and gentlemen, basahin nyo na lang yan on your own. No? Na-explain ko naman na siya entirely. Di ba? um, Ang sinasabi therefore ni Plato sa atin is that the relation among the virtues seems tighter than that, for it seems that the unjust person necessarily fails to be wise, courageous, or does things in moderation. Thus, it does not only mean that justice prevails when the three parts of the soul is in harmony with each other, your subkind must also work, that of which your wisdom, courage, and temperance would follow. In short, when a person is wise enough, courageous enough, and thus thinks in moderation, he is thus just. Diba? Ganda ng point ni Plato. Ang sinasabi ni Plato sa atin, ladies and gentlemen, therefore, ang pinaka-ethical na person ay yung alam niya kung ano ang relevance ng kanyang soul na nagwo-work in harmony with each other. Unfortunately, we become so unethical because our soul is not in harmony with each other and we are not wise enough, we are not courageous enough, and we don't do things in moderation. Usually may pa-seat work ako, no? Like, share an instance in your life when you couldn't handle your temperance, which led you to do something unethical. Did you ever feel guilty about that situation? And finally, how did you resolve it? Point for reflection. Some sort of point for reflection sana siya. Para siyang, di ba? Nagawa ko yun kasi hindi ako narunong tempi, nandilim ang paningin ko, etc. No? Something to ponder on when we are now in our face-to-face classes. Which now leads us finally to Aristotle. Yeah. So, meron din ako, of course, philosophy of Aristotle. So, yeah, being a nerd since high school, I read these books. Pero syempre, we have Plato here and then we have, Aristotle here. Ano naman ang deal ni Aristotle? Who was he? And how did he provide us, sorry, how did he provide some sort of understanding? So, sorry, okay. How did he provide a sort of understanding on what ethics is? Aristotle was actually still no sa virtue ethics siya nag-focus. We study ethics in order to improve our lives and therefore its principal concern is the nature of the human well-being. Actually, yung term na virtue ethics kay Aristotle na nag-originates. And for him, the arete, okay, or the an excellent life is a virtuous life. Di ba? Yun yung kanyang buong philosophy. Like Plato, he regards the ethical virtues such as justice, courage, temperance, and so on as complex, rational, emotional, and social skills. But kinda rejects Plato's idea that in order for you to be completely virtuous, you must acquire mathematics, science, philosophy, and understanding of what goodness is. Because what we need, according to Aristotle, in order to live a life that is well, is a proper appreciation of the way in which such goods as friendship, pleasure, virtue, honor would fit together as a whole. Sabi naman ni Aristotle, wag na tayo masyadong do not over-intellectualize our ethical selves. Nakabase lang daw po yan sa iyong ugali. Okay? Yun sa iyong ugali. Sige. Let's skip through all of this kasi nga, ano no. Anyway, ethics son, his name is Nicomachus, kaya nga may Aristotle's Nicomachean ethics, no? Maintindihan nyo lahat yan later on. Now, according to him, he insists that ethics is not just a theoretical discipline but a practical one. 'Di ba yung lesson 2 natin, may dalawa tayong types of wisdom. You have theoretical wisdom and practical wisdom. And according to Aristotle, yung practical wisdom, doon mo makukuha yung morality mo. Because ethics is the theory and morality is the practice. But it goes deeper than that, no? Sometimes we don't know what is good, right? And the difficult and controversial question arise when we ask whether certain of these goods are more desirable than others. So for example, it is better to pay my debt than to harm others, or di ba yun yung ating moral dilemma lesson 3. But we go beyond this. According to Aristotle, the search for the good is a search for the highest good. And he assumed that the highest good, whether it turns out to be, has three characteristics. First and foremost, it is desirable for itself. Second, it is not desirable for the sake of some other good. And all other goods are desirable for its sake. And that is what leads us to the eudaimonistic life. Mamaya, mapag-usapan natin yun. The eudaimon is the happiness, euzen, which means living well. The Greek term eudaimon is composed of two parts, eu, which means well, and daimon, which means divinity or spirits, diba? And the essence of eudaimonia is encapsulated by what he is trying to tell us via his golden mean theory. Okay, let's skip through all of this. Sorry. Sabi nga niya, no, happiness, the essence of being good is being happy. And happiness is a virtue, not just a virtue, but a virtuous activity. And let's take a look at this. He created this what he calls now golden mean theory. Sorry, basahin niyo to ha. I mean, importante pa rin to. I'm just trying to skip para kasi feel ko medyo ano na, no? Let's try to experiment on the good person complex. You can watch Crash Course Philosophy right here. Dito yung link dito mismo sa baba, no? And of course, din sa PowerPoint itself. Uh, can you imagine a person who always knows what to say, who can diffuse a tense situation, deliver tough news gracefully, is confident without being arrogant, brave but not reckless, generous but extravagant? This is the type of person that everybody wants to be around, right? To be like someone who seems to have mastered the art of being a person. Shout out to Hank Green because these are all from the Crash Course Philosophy. Now, according to Aristotle, being virtuous is not a moral theory. I mean, it is a moral theory, but it's not about the categorical imperative. It's not about the written rule. It's not even about the principle. It only is about character. And tama siya doon, no? Nasa ugali natin yun. And for Aristotle, virtue ethics, there is a ancient assumption that humans have a fixed nature or an essence of some sort, and that the way we flourish is by adhering to that nature, which is nice, right? And all of us here has some sort of proper functioning. And according to him, everything has a function, and a thing is good to the extent that if it fulfills its function, and bad that if it doesn't. Let's imagine a knife. If mapuro lang knife, then it no longer fulfills its function. Or let's say a rose, no, ay nalantana, then of course that rose doesn't really put any aesthetic function anymore. Just like human beings now, we are, according to Aristotle, supposed to function proper well. We are animals, but we are not just animals. We are rational animals. And the way we cater to our function is by allowing ourselves, diba, to involve using reason and getting along with our pack. That is our function. Again, shout out to the School of Life. Sa PowerPoint na to kasi ito yung graphics nila. No? But Aristotle is trying to tell us, St. Thomas Aquinas was actually, nanghango siya sa works ni Aristotle. Sabi niya, goodness is from God. Well, according to Aristotle, goodness is it's natural. It's nature's will. And of course, being virtuous Aristotle argued that nature has built us the desire to be virtuous in the same way that acorns are built with the drive to become oaks. But here is where it gets more interesting. Um, how does one become virtuous? Yun yung sorry, kulang ng letter E. How does one become virtuous dapat yan? Now, Aristotle suggested this. Sabi niya, a person being or a person that has virtue means doing the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right amount, toward the right people. Now, what did he mean by that, right? It's kinda complicated to begin with, right? Pero isa lang yung point ni Plato. Para mas maintindihan natin yung point niya, tignan natin yung kanyang na-develop na golden mean theory. According to Aristotle, sorry, Plato ako ng Plato, Aristotle pala. Aristotle tried to tell us that there are vices such as deficiency and excess. Virtue is now the sweet spot between the extreme of an excess and the extreme of a deficiency. And this is what he calls the golden mean. And according to Aristotle, shout out again to Hank Green and of course the Crash Course Philosophy. Imagine yourself, you just got out of the cinema, you saw an old lady getting mugged. Now, you would think a courageous person would run over there and stop the mugging because courage means putting yourself in a harm's way for a good cause, right? But of course, Aristotle is trying to tell us that we need to first take stock of the situation. What happened, what's the location, overview, and of course, what can be our options to intervene, to call for help, to sure we'll leave. And of course, it's Aristotle suggested that if we can take stock of the situation, then okay lang. What if hindi? No? What if it's bigger pala? So we can, we can intervene or we can call for help. So for Aristotle, courage is actually the sweet spot between being a coward and being too reckless naman po. Kaya nga siya sweet spot, kaya nga siya golden mean. So a courageous person will assess the situation first. They'll know their own abilities and they'll take action. They'll take action that is right in that particular situation. Because courage is finding the right way to act. And that is the essence of the golden mean theory. Same is true with virtues such as honesty, right? In gitna siya no ng pagiging failing to say things that need to be said and from being brutally honest. This also presupposes, therefore, knowing how to deliver hard truths gracefully, how to break bad news gently, or to offer criticism in a way that's constructive rather than soul-crushing. Diba? Meron tayong mga kaibigan na, alam mo yun, parang hindi marunong rumeno ang kanilang mga bibig, no? Just to say whatever they want to say. And they don't realize that they're hurting the people na pala that they're talking to by just being brutally honest. Diba? Same is true with generosity, right? It is the virtue of being too stingy or of course being too prodigal, di ba? Kasi nga yung point dito ni Aristotle is that we need to act rightly at the same manner that if we act in excess or we act in deficiency naman, doon din tayo nagkakaroon ng vice. Hindi tayo nagiging virtue ethical people. One thing is for sure, ladies and gentlemen, when we want to choose how to act wisely, the particular circumstances are always more important than the general theories. Sabi nga natin ito, lesson 2, di ba? Practical wisdom is like the art of navigation. You need to get to know the winds of the tides, and you need to know where where you want to go, and you need to be responsive to changing circumstances, which, make you find yourself. No? It's kind of like navigating. It's a moral compass. And if you ask yourself, you don't ask, what would I do? You would ask, what would a wise person do in this situation? That is what virtue ethics is for Aristotle. And what is the point of all of this? Bakit niya po gustong sabihin sa atin na kailangan natin lahat ng mga ganito? The point of Aristotle is that we need to lead a life of a eudaimonistic life, or it leads us to eudaimonia. And the point of Aristotle here is that it doesn't have a simple English translation, but it means a life well lived or human flourishing. Now, we have to be wary. No, we have to be wary. Choosing to live a eudaimonistic life means that you're never done improving and you're never to a point where you can just coast. Take note, ladies and gentlemen, you're constantly setting new goals and working to develop new muscles, literally and figuratively. Choosing to live life in this way also means that you will face disappointments and failures because eudaimonia doesn't mean a life of cupcakes and rainbows. But just like the golden mean theory, it means that the sweet pleasure of sinking into bed at the end of an absolutely exhausting day. Also, it's the satisfaction of knowing you have accomplished a lot and that if you push yourself to be the very best person you could be. So, this is morality for Aristotle. It's being the best you can personally be, honing your strengths while working on your weaknesses. In short, for Aristotle, that kind of person who lives like this is the kind of person who will do good things. And a sort of, final reminder, I would like to quote Aristotle once again. It is our choice of good or evil that determines our character, not our opinion about good or evil. Diba? So actions speak louder than words, according to Aristotle. And if you really want to become virtue ethical, you need to practice it excellently. Hindi yung dito ka lang, no? Tapos parang, hindi yung parang sa una ka lang magaling, sa umpisa ka lang magaling. Take notes, ladies and gentlemen, what is the person who is ethical is a person who constantly tries, di ba? Yun ang point ni Aristotle. And that is virtue ethics for Aristotle. And that is now the end of our lesson, the virtue ethical doctrines of Plato, of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. I hope you learned something today. Check out my socials if you want to follow me, no? If you want to contact me as well. Even if you're not my student, I'm willing to answer your questions. And if you do have questions, do not hesitate to ask me. So thank you so much for again being here, for watching the video. I hope you learned something today. And in case that good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends on the time that you are watching this. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.